Welcome to For Realsies, where we do Real Talk, a series under our Advocate Legal Vest program, which aims to improve on positive attitudes by increasing empathy and shifting behavior among youth through fostering strong gender and trauma-sensitive approaches. This initiative is done by Project Liberate, a non-profit organization that aims to shift attitudes and behavior towards the issue of human trafficking and exploitation. I'm Amy. Today we'll be talking about Road to Recovery, Trauma Impact on Survivors of Human Trafficking with our special guest, Kalai. Let's get started. Today in this series, we're excited to have Kalai, a program officer with Global Shepherds. She's going to share her expertise and experience on the application of trauma-informed approaches when dealing with survivors of human trafficking. Welcome to For Realsies, and thank you for joining us here today. So before we get into the questions and the topic of the day, I would like to ask you, how are you today?
Okay, I'm very good today, actually excited for this interview.
And would you mind sharing with us one fun fact or an interesting fact about you?
I don't know if this is considered fun or interesting, but I think about 5 years ago, somebody dumped puppies in front of my house. So my family and myself, we took care of these puppies, which did not even open the eyes yet.
Oh.
So we took care, so we have to work on shifts to actually properly feed them. So we gave away most of them. I have one still with me.
How many were the puppies?
About 8 puppies.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, you guys, 8 puppies. That's a lot of really newborn babies.
Yeah.
And you have to feed
So after 2-3 hours we have to feed, with bottle.
Wow.
It's interesting.
That's
for
nice.
me.
That's really cute. And I think usually people start with at least one puppy to take care, just to get a feel, but then you tried taking care of 8 at the same time. That's very interesting. Alright then, so I would like to know about Global Shepherds' role on the issue. So can you describe Global Shepherds as an organization and the role relating to the issue of human trafficking?
Okay. So Global Shepherds is a not-for-profit organization. Objective of the organization is to provide support to traffic victims and also survivors who have gone through other types of abuses, neglect and all that. So that's the objective of the organization. So in human trafficking issue, so we are one of the representatives in Mambo Council, so to advocate for victims' voices. And we have actually 4 quadrants of work that we do. So one is advocacy, another one is provide shelter for traffic victims. We also have outreach programs where we go to government shelters to do programs with the victims or the survivors in the shelter. And also we do capacity building for the shelter staff on trauma-informed approaches.
And I'm curious to know what led you to become involved in this work and what is your role in the organization?
Okay, so I accepted the offer 5 years ago because it was interesting and it was new. I didn't know much then about human trafficking, but here I am after 5 years, and I really love what I do. About my role, so what I do is I do programs with traffic survivors, so empowerment program, self-development program, and I'm also involved in capacity building for staff, all the stakeholders involved in supporting the victims of trafficking survivors.
Alright, so I guess after learning about Global Shepherd's significant role in the issue and also in the protection of survivors, maybe now we can move on to the reality of women in the shelter. In a legal perspective, right? What is the process that survivors go through after being rescued?
Okay, so after they are rescued, they will be getting a protection order. So we call it interim protection order. In short, we call it IPO. So once they get the protection order, they will be placed in a safe home or a shelter. So they will be there for 21 days while the investigation is ongoing in the background. So they will be staying in the shelter. They'll be getting their basic needs and all that in that shelter. And after that, when the decision is made by the magistrate or by the judge to say that this person or this survivor is confirmed a victim or a survivor of trafficking situation, then they will be getting or given protection order. So one protection order is for 3 months, and these 3 months is for them to give their witness statement in court, right? So they will be again placed in a shelter for the 3 months while waiting for their court proceeding to take place. So sometimes these 3 months can be extended, maybe another 3 months or another 3 months added, and it all depends on how long the witness statement, how long it takes to actually give the witness statement and all that. So after that is done, let's say they're done with their witness statement, then what happens next is that they can be repatriated back home. So while they are waiting for the repatriation back home, we have to do some processes that will take place to see whether the reintegration process back home is how we can support them back home actually. Yeah. So this basically is the process that they go through.
How do they feel about the process that they have to go through to access justice?
Like from my experience, right, working with so many traffic survivors, listening to their stories, they basically are very happy that they are rescued. Very glad, relieved that they are rescued from the trafficking situation. And they are also, so many of them are so passionate that they are actually doing something to actually, prosecute, in that prosecution journey, right, for the perpetrator or the trafficker that did this to them. They're very passionate, but at the same time, when the time takes so long to actually give the witness statement and finally finally they get sent back home, the time is something which is very, very challenging because they have family back home that they need to provide, so that can be challenging. But at the end of the day, when they're done with the witness statement, doesn't matter how long it takes, you can see that they're very proud of themselves, a renewed self-confidence, that you can see from them.
That human trafficking is a very serious crime in Malaysia, and oftentimes they are not just the physical impacts, but also it can take a mental toll on the survivors. So this is us moving into the next topic of the conversation, which is trauma and its impact to survivors. So can you tell us about the level of traumas these survivors go through in general?
So level of trauma is very unique to each survivor that we see in the shelter, right? Some of them comes with like high level of trauma, and they manifest it in different ways. They can be seen as crying, they can be very distrustful of whoever who's talking to them. They don't want to engage in any activities, right? And some of them, the level of trauma is not that maybe high, so they are very calm. But at the same time, we cannot judge or say that, okay, maybe they are being calm because their level of trauma is low. We can't say that because anything in the process of staying in the shelter can trigger them in any way possible, trigger them or remind them of a traumatic situation that happened before, and that can make them show some symptoms of trauma actually. So they have varying levels of trauma, but it's just that in the shelter we have to be very aware of all these symptoms, all these behaviors, and so that we can respond appropriately.
My next question is, why is it important to acknowledge how trauma affects survivors?
Because it's very important to acknowledge trauma is because trauma is prevalent. It's so common. It's a very common experience. Maybe one of us in this room might have gone through trauma, right? So same goes to these survivors. We don't know what they have gone through in their childhood or when they were back in their home country. So, and plus with this trafficking experience that they have gone through, which is highly possible to be traumatic. So when we acknowledge that they have gone through trauma, we can provide the appropriate support that can help them recover.
Practices that Global Shepherds do to help these survivors recover from trauma?
Alright. Okay, so global shepherds take a trauma-informed approach, right, and practices. So what we mean by that is that acknowledging that all of them, all the survivors who walks into the shelter might have gone through trauma. So all our policies or all our practices in the shelter should be sensitive to the trauma experience that they have gone through, right? So what we do is we make sure first, I think the first principle of trauma-informed is to provide a safe space. And when we say safe space, it's not only the physical safety, but also psychological safety. So making sure the place that they are is safe, making sure our language that we use with them not triggering or not re-traumatizing them in any way that may remind them of their trafficking experiences, right? So the language that we use has to be trauma-informed, and we also give them a lot of choice, like for example, simple things like, if we have to have a meeting with them, asking them, what do you think, where do you want to sit, what time do you want to have this meeting? So giving a lot of decision, allowing them to make the decision so that they feel in control. When they go through trafficking or these traumatic experiences, it involves a lot of they lose a lot of control. So they feel that they don't have control in their life. So when we slowly, when they're staying in the shelter, when we give them give them power to make the decision, slowly they recover the control. So they feel more in control of their life. So a lot of they get to make a lot of decisions. We do that purposely, right? Purposely done so that they get that. So we also. So a part of this trauma-informed practices approach in the shelter, we also cannot forget the shelter staff who are providing care and protection. So a lot of trainings are given for them so that they are more aware of their own biases towards the survivors, or they're more aware of what they do, so that at any point they don't show their biases. And re-traumatize the survivors. So we do a lot of work with the staff as well, which is very important, and a lot of self-care for them as well. Yeah, so these are some of the practices that we do in the shelter to make sure that it's trauma-informed, or the survivor feels safe in the shelter.
To know if you don't mind sharing a real case study of a survivor who has been impacted by trauma, and how has the individual being supported in their recovery journey.
Okay, so I remember this one case very vividly. So this person, this survivor, a woman, middle-aged woman, early 40s, sorry. So what happened was that she was badly abused by her employer, and she was sent to another shelter. For her IPO period, she was in another shelter, and so due to the abuse, she had vision problems. She can only see partially, right? So she was sent to another shelter, and because she was very traumatized, she was not able to give a good statement, to the investigation officer. So they were not able to get the evidence, to actually prosecute the case. That's what happened. So because she can't remember one, and she was highly traumatized. So what happened was the case, the IPO was revoked, so the case did not go through the system. She did not get a protection order. So she was sent to Global Shepherd Shelter for temporary shelter until she's repatriated back home. Right? So when she came in, I still remember seeing her, she was because she cannot see, so she will have to feel the walls to walk around. She can see partially, but still it was bad enough, I think so, and she was not really talking to anybody. She looked very scared and all that. So the case officers did a good job actually, so they had many meetings with her to tell her that it's a safe place, it's okay for you, you'll be sent back home and all that. And then came up with a case plan again, a case plan for her to see what will help her. So in that program, or in that case plan, we also had some programs that can help her, like for example empowerment sessions and all that, and also counseling. She had a counselor that she can talk to. and we were able to get support from an international NGO to fund for eye operation. Right? So they funded her eye operation, she went through the operation, and it was successful. I mean, she could see a little bit, but it was not, she did not fully recover. She did not get 100% of her vision, but it was better than last time. Right? So, and what happened after the operation is that she got this new self-confidence, right? She, and with all the help of, the operation that took place, successful operation, the programs in the shelter, and also counseling, which helped her to gain the confidence, and she was able to remember what happened to her, right? And she looked more confident, so she consented to reopen the case. Right? Although the IPO was revoked, so she consented to reopen her case, and she got a protection order, and right now she's actually in the process of going to, she's already been to a few sessions of court proceedings, and she's in that process actually to give her witness statement in court. So, like this case, for me, I think it's like one of the success story lah, right? With the proper support that is individualized support, depending on the needs, can actually make the survivor feel more confident.
Okay, so now after learning about trauma and the road to recovery for survivors, we have almost reached the end of our interview for today. Now we are just going into the call to actions and closing remarks. I would like to know what practices can future law practitioners do when they have clients who have faced trauma?
So I think it should be victim-centered, individualized approach, individualized, because each survivor that you meet is unique, they have different needs, right? So victim-centered, trauma-informed approaches, keeping in mind that this person sitting right in front of you, to all the law practitioners, might have gone through trauma, and how you support them from where they are. So I think that will help. And also to add a multidisciplinary approach or coordination, right? So, for example, in this, for a case to be successful, we have different players. We have the shelter, we have the TPPs, we have others, right, the investigation officer. So if there's a collaboration within all this team to help that one person, it will be very, very, I think it will be more effective.
That's nice. And maybe what can the public do or the youth do to advocate for this issue?
I think to learn about human trafficking, to read it up, to talk to their peers, and also to advocate for the victims or the survivors, and to join, Labor Aid or the NGOs that are doing all these programs to gain awareness, right? And also to join and do something. I think that's what people can do.
So, what are your hopes and plans for the future?
Okay, so my hope is so that trauma-informed approach is institutionalized, right? In whatever process or in our national referral mechanism actually, so that people are more aware, all the players in there, all the stakeholders are aware about trauma and how to be sensitive towards the survivors. Yeah. And also to add, also survivor leadership. I think they have it in them because they are the experts, I'd say. They are the experts. They have gone through the experience. So to how to actually, I just hope that in few years' time that we have a survivor leadership team or something that can advocate for themselves to help their own peers.
All right, so that brings us to the end of this interview. Thank you again so much for joining us here today, and also for sharing so much knowledge on the issue of trauma and also human trafficking. It has certainly been very impactful. And if you want to know more about Global Shepherds and what they do, where can they find you and your organization?
Okay, so we have a website that people can go there and find out what we do. And if they are interested, they can join us as a volunteer to help with all the programs that we do. So please follow us on Insta and also Facebook if you want to see what we are doing currently.
Okay, awesome. Once again, thank you so much, Kamai, for joining us today. And also, follow us on Project Liberate, at Project Liberate on Instagram to keep up with the latest update and to catch us on our next series. So thank you.